Hey, Marianne DeNovellis here with the Six Figure Mastermind, and today we're going to be talking about how to date your spouse. I love this topic of conversation because I love falling in love with my spouse over and over and over again. The question of the day is how to date your spouse. Now, that's kind of a funny concept, isn't it? Didn't you date so you could find your spouse and now you don't have to try and win them over anymore because they're already yours and you're good? Wrong! It's time to date your spouse over and over and over again and to rekindle that fire and that passion in your relationship. So the question is, how do we do it? I love the book by Stan Cronin, How to Date Your Wife. And you better believe that I read that before I gave it to my husband to make sure that it was legit on the inside. And he wrote the book based on a poll that he had done with many, many women all over the place about what is it like and how do women want to be dated. And don't worry, we're not just going to talk about women here. This is for both of us. But if you're looking for a great resource guide, guys, if you really want to be on your wife's good graces, go pick up the book and read it. I would highly, just from a woman perspective, I would highly recommend it. Okay, let's get down to business. How to date your spouse. How do you find time to date your spouse, especially maybe if you have kids or jobs that you're both working? It's not only important, but it becomes more important the more busy your lives get to actually date your spouse. So what are some of the things that get in your way? Well, we don't have enough time. That could get in the way. We don't have enough money. That could get in the way. We don't have the relationship we used to have. We're just not as in love with each other. Guys, no better reason than to start right now with redating and rekindling that relationship with your spouse. It's time to redefine what a date is. I was actually in Costa Rica this past week, and my husband actually chose not to come with me. He wanted to stay home with the kids because, we've got a couple extra things coming up and wanted to make sure that we didn't leave them for the babysitter. And so he decided not to come with me on my business trip and stay home with our family this time, which was great. We both supported that. It worked really well for us. And one of the things that he did in order to stay connected while we were geographically apart was he actually started going through my old journals. He started reading all of the things I had written from a long time ago. And I was talking about dating with him, and he said, Marianne, I was reading your journals last week, and he said, you wrote about one of the favorite dates you said you'd ever had. And it was something so simple that, honestly, that I didn't remember 10 years later, but I'm glad I wrote it down in my journal. And he said, Marianne, one of the dates that you talked about in your journal that you loved the most was when you got home from work, and I had spread out a blanket on the front lawn, and with some snacks and things next to it, and we stargazed together that night. The kids were already inside asleep, and I think we cracked open the front door a little bit so that we could hear if they needed us. But it was a simple gesture that showed me that he cared and was interested in spending time with me. Dates don't have to be complicated. It's really fun when they are. In fact, some of my favorite dates are when my husband draws out this whole itinerary and the plan, and he calls ahead and makes the arrangements and surprises me with this whole scenario. But some of the most favorite dates I have are those small moments where he just took the time to be aware of what I was interested in. He knew that I liked to spend quality time with him. He knew that I liked acts of service. So we combined the two and spread out this beautiful little midnight picnic where we could be out in the forest stargazing together. Dating your spouse is easy and it's simple and it doesn't have to take a lot of money. Another book I want to recommend to both of you, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. There are 5 specific ways that people really like to be loved. And when you can combine those and mix those together and create a really beautiful, passionate way for you to share that love with your spouse, there's a really beautiful thing that happens when it doesn't require money, when it doesn't require time. It's this idea that it's the thought that counts. The thought does count, and the actions count too. But when you can put thought into your dates together, thinking, I'm going to pay attention to all the little clues that my spouse is dropping this week. Every time they say, I like, I'm going to listen to what they like and incorporate that in my date. Every time they hear a song that they like, I'm going to incorporate that into my date. I remember one time I was driving down the road and my husband had been kind of tuning in and listening to what I had been listening to on the radio, and he put together a CD, and without even telling me, he put the CD in my car. And as soon as I heard the songs come in on my car from the CD player, I was like, oh my gosh, how sweet of him that he totally just put together an album of all of my favorite music. I felt like I was on a date with him, even though he wasn't there, because he gave me a piece of himself and a piece of what I love to take with me all the way. A beautiful way to have dates with your spouse and take away all the excuses is to do daily date night. Daily date night is kind of a process or a ritual or a habit that we have together where we take at least a half an hour every single day after all the kids are in bed, after all the chores are taken care of, to just do fun things together and focus on our relationships. And that could look like anything. It could look like sitting down and laughing together over a picture that you saw online, or it could look like playing a card game with each other. It could look like creating something together, maybe working in the kitchen together. Or it could look like drawing up a plan to redo your backyard together, something that it's just the two of you. It could just look like staring at each other for 15 minutes and saying nice things to each other and finding ways. One thing I love to do is just make a list of what my spouse loves and then look for ways to do that for him on a regular basis. Do this for yourself. Here's a challenge for you. Write down the list of the top 10 ways that you feel loved. Have your spouse do the same thing. In fact, if your spouse isn't here watching this video with you, go get them. Like, pause the video, go get your spouse, and restart it and watch it together, because this is how to date your spouse. Both of you want to be in on this, right? So make a list of the top 10 ways that you feel loved and have your spouse do the same thing, and then swap them. Now you've got a key to how your spouse feels loved. You've got the cheat sheet on how to love your spouse, like direct from your spouse. No better authority to have this from than your spouse. Find a way to accomplish all of those things for your spouse to show them love, because you know that they will recognize feeling loved in that way. Get a cheat sheet from your spouse. Love them with physical touch. Love them with words of affirmation. Love them with all of the 5 love languages, with acts of service, with kind words, with everything that you can think of. Be thinking in your head, how can I show love to my spouse today? And then tell them when you're doing it. If you make breakfast for your spouse and say, I made breakfast for you as a show of my love for you. Dates don't have to be small or big or have any other definition than what you put on them. Friday nights are a set aside, like, special time for us. I never, ever schedule anything on Friday nights because I always keep those nights open for me and my spouse. So do your marriage that favor. Date your spouse and set aside specific time that doesn't get to be infringed on or encroached by anything else. There's no work schedules, there's no clients, there's no fulfillment, there's no friend time that takes over, because your spouse and the relationship you have with them is the number one priority. With the mortal relationships that you will ever have in this entire history of this entire world, the relationship with your spouse gets to be number one. So take time deliberately for your spouse. Tell them that you love them. Give them a special date, even if it's just by a simple gift. Or maybe show them love by creating something beautiful and elaborate. Sweep your spouse off their feet. And I say spouse because men love to have this done with them. They love to have the woman show up and ask them out on a date too. I know, because my spouse has told me. He loves it when I ask him out on a date. Do this for each other. Create those daily dates to have time to reconnect with each other, and so that your relationship becomes the bedrock of everything else you create. So now you know how easy and simple it is to date your spouse. It can be easy, it can be complex, no matter what, it's always fun. Leave me a comment below. In fact, let's get the mastermind rolling and leave each other some comments. Leave me a comment on your favorite date that you've ever had with your spouse, and let's get the juices flowing here and create some amazing, amazing date nights. We'll see you tomorrow.